So hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. Now today I've got something quite special for you. I've got the new Tavelo Arrow. Is it Arrow or Arow? It's missing an R, I'm not quite sure. Anyway, many people have got this frame already and they're doing ride reviews, but you come to the Peak Talk YouTube channel to get the proper nitty-gritty tolerances and engineering. That's why I'm doing a build review, because once this is built up and all the little, niggles are sorted, it's going to ride like any other bike out there. So it's going to hold its stiffness well, and it's going to stay stiff for a long time. It's going to be light, stiff, comfortable, compliant, all this BS. What's it like to actually build? Because when you build it and you look at all the small parts, that's when you get a good understanding for the quality and the tolerances and engineering or lack of engineering that's gone into this. Sometimes when you get products like this, I mean, I don't get frames often, but I get lots of wheels, and you think, is this a Peak Talk special? Is this a special for YouTube? Is this one plucked off the production line with super high quality and super high tolerances? This one is definitely not a Peak Talk special. And I also think, wouldn't it be great to have another sample, like a second one, to kind of check the quality from production sample to production sample? Oh my God, where did that come from? Anyway, so in this review, we're going to look at all the small little parts, the pieces of hardware, the pieces of engineering that when you do it yourself, you see some really bad things on this frame. And on paper, it looks great. It's kind of stolen the best aero features from many of the aero bikes out there. You've got the sort of horizontal top tube nearly of the Cannondale, this head tube of the old S-Works SL7. You've got a deep fork, but not too deep. It looks like a nice bike. And these colors are very divisive, I have to say. The color schemes available for this frame are pretty out there. There aren't many understated choices if you just want something quite plain. I've gone for this one, which I can only describe as Dubai Marina Gold and Blue. I quite like it. It's a bit of a throwback to the old Peugeot Premier in terms of the whiteness, and that's about it. There's a lot more quality components on this bike than there are on this bike, and the fact that this bike costs more than this bike, which is a TCR Advanced SL, it's all a bit messed up. This is nearly 2,000 USD, which is more than I bought that frame for. Okay, I got a bit of a discount on it, it was in a sale, but this frame cost me 1,500 quid. So this is expensive, and it should be absolutely spot on, and it isn't. It's not perfect, which is why I haven't finished building it up yet. So basically, the bottom bracket shell's undersized. It's egg-shaped. In certain areas, it's 40.94, which is tight but passable. In certain areas, it's about 40.8 something, and it's just too tight. Now, I'd normally stick with a Shimano kind of plastic bottom bracket for anything PF86. I've never had a problem on giant bikes with a plastic Shimano BB. It's cheap, it works, it's silent, never had a creak. The one the frame shit with is absolutely dog shit, and we'll look at that in the kind of build video. You can't use it. 40.75, what on earth? How the hell can you mess up a metal BB so much? And it comes with these weird plastic sleeves that you have to use. They arrive damaged. And I've said to Tavelo, and I'll put in the correspondence just for clarity's sake in English and Chinese about all the quality issues. The headset, the lack of weather seal in the top bearing cover, the fact that you can't preload the headset enough to take the play out, the fact that the top cap is too big and creates too much friction on the stem, you'd be better off with a normal bolt. The fact that the BB's undersized, the fact that there was burrs all over the seat clamp which scratched the hell out of the seat post. And when I did assemble it, you'll see here, and I'll put in further on in the video, the burrs that were present on the seat clamp because they've been damaged in the factory. Like, simple chamfer. Always say this, please chamfer anything that's to do with clamping carbon or wedges or stems or whatever. But I think once the things are fixed, I'll do a ride review and I'm going to use all those cliches, like it holds its speed and it stiffens up well, and it lasts 5 minutes. Quite disappointing, the cost of this frame. I think this is the first one in production, like of a production frame, because it's got the frame number 580F0001. So I think this is the first 58. Now, is that excusable? I don't know. That's why I've got hold of another one to see what that's like. And on that one, the BB is a bit better, but it's still a little bit undersized, and it has the same component issues like I had with this one. Even the fork bung, I put that in too tight. It destroys as you'll see here, it destroys the O-rings that hold the segments together. Once it's in, you can't get it out, even when the thing's completely tension-free. So if you undo the sort of collet, the bottom nut falls down into the fork, and the thing is still stuck in the fork steerer. So if you do need to cut the steerer and you're using that to get the right height, good job getting it out. I had to pry it out with my nails and the underside of a knife. Just little things like this, which is really annoying, which you don't get on other channels because they'll just ride and take pictures for Instagram and have their boutique bike shop build up for them.
Jesse, mate, I'm talking about you.
I'm the first one to call out Western companies that charge too much and have bad quality, but they don't have, on the whole, issues as bad as this. Like, yes, the Giant Revolt cracks the seat post, that's a warranty issue, or the Canyon has a creaky seat post, and you have to grease it and carbon paste it and stuff like this. There are sort of running issues of bad design, but simple quality issues, I think, are unforgivable. You wouldn't get that from the Western frames, and you're getting it on this, and this is nearly 2,000 USD. So I think they've got a good recipe. I think they need to slow down. I always say this about China companies, they need to slow down and just do the right things properly, do the simple things properly. Anyway, let's dive into the details. First thing we're going to do is look at the bottom bracket shell. It's so out, this bottom bracket, you'll see that even with vernier calipers, the BB just won't go in. And then we're going to do a quick look at all the other parts and, yeah, comment on the overall quality of everything. Spirit Animal costs more than that. This has to be really good. The handlebars are nice and light, not very stiff, very flexy, and there's no flare to the drops, and the drops are very short. So it's things like that. Because this is a fixed integrated cockpit, it's not easy to change that. So you could put a normal stem on here if you wanted to, but then you've got no top cap integration for the cables. So getting the cables from under the stem down into the first spacer would require something custom. So you're stuck with these bars basically, otherwise you're into 3D printing custom top cap spacers and stuff like that. Another little thing I think they should put is a grommet on the seat tube clamp, the seat post clamp. Weather's going to get in there, there's no rubber seal for that. You could just put grease on it, or you could make your own, but you shouldn't have to make your own parts on a 2,000 USD bike. Anyway, undecided about group set as yet. The reason why this is not built up is because I wanted to do all these checks before I made sure it was worth spending 1,400 quid on Ultegra, because, you know, I don't want to put lipstick on a pig. I'm not spending 1,400 quid of my own money on something that's not worthy. Let's have a look at the little engineering features. Cheers, and I'll see you in the next one. Why didn't they just leave a longer chimney on the fork and give you more spaces? I don't know. The stack on this 58 is exceptionally low. This is the biggest size, right? This is the biggest size for me I can get in terms of stack and reach. It's not too far off a TCR in terms of stack and reach, but if you were to buy a TCR Propel SL8, you get way more spaces in the box. You get more steerer to play with. So I'm not going to cut this steer at all. They seem to have decided my bike fit for me, which is utterly ridiculous. Now, whatever happened to the weather seal, right? You used to get on bikes an internal O-ring in the top cap and like a little skirt that ran around the edge. You'd get an internal O-ring that sleeved down on the steerer tube. Now, we've just sort of done away with that on modern bikes. Why? It worked really well, and now headset bearings don't last because basically this is just a big plastic lump on top of the bearing. Bottom bracket is undersized. I do quite like the Dubai Marina Blue vibe, so we're going with it, but it's going to need a lot of work to open this up. So 40.86, and I'm really squeezing the calipers. That's 100 microns too small. That's a lot. It's 0.1 of a mil. 40.9. So like the other one, it's slightly egg-shaped. So 40.86, 40.9, 50 to 100 microns too small. There's no way I'm going to be able to fit that in. I could possibly squeeze a plastic Shimano one in. You know, you shouldn't have to fettle these things at home. The last thing I want to do is open this up and actually make it more egg-shaped and bumpy and, you know, out around. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going to do with this. Just, you know, full disclaimer, I don't get paid to do this shit. This is taking my time, my free time. If it's going to take too long, I'm just not going to build the bike. That's why I haven't brought a group set. Fuck's sakes. Let's see. I know these are only calipers, but you can measure a bore with calipers if the bore is quite big, because the ratio of the jaw width, kind of bridging the sides, is hardly anything. This is so out, this BB. I don't know if you can see that, it's 40.87, 40.86. It's so out that you don't need a Mitch Toto bore gauge to be able to measure this. I don't know what I'm going to do with this. Okay, across there it's 40.88. Now I measured it last night. There were areas where it was good. 40.91, still too tight. For F it should be about 40.96 to 40.98. That's what I would say is the ideal PF86 standard if you're using the plastic BB. If you're using a metal BB like this, it needs to be a bit looser because this won't give. Peel back the plastic. It's such a shame because it's faced nicely, and the inside is a very nice finish. Like I said in the video, I believe this is EPS molded, so the inside of the frame is super smooth. Like when I finger it like that, when I go, you know, get one in, and then you can, if you're lucky, you could get two in without a bit of grease. It's very smooth up in there. There's no like excess resin wrinkles or anything like that. So definitely a nice finish inside the frame. It's just too tight. 9.2, bit better across there. So this one is a bit egg-shaped. It's larger there and a bit narrower there. And just to prove to you, this is not frame number 1. The white one is frame number 1. This is QX580, so that's 580 millimeters. 0052. So is this the 52nd? Is this the 52nd frame off the production line? QC pass, it says. It says QC pass.
Enjoy riding.
What does QC mean? Quite crap? Shame, because I quite like this colour. It's well jazzy, isn't it? Right, so there is really no easy way of opening this up. The only way you do it accurately is on a milling machine with a milling bed in a proper CNC workshop. However, finding a datum to hold the BB shell parallel to the tool would be almost impossible on a bike frame. There's no flat datums to clamp it down on a milling bed. So what I'm going to do, and it's the only method I can do it practically at home, is use a flap wheel. Now what I've got here is a 80 grit 40mm flat wheel. You can get these in different sizes, but this will fit quite nicely in the hole, which is 41. And then you have to be pretty careful that you're obviously holding the drill parallel to the axis of the hole, concentric to the hole. So like I said, I can't control the alignment between the two cups either. That's already been set basically by the mold. So all I can do is open up with a flat wheel, test it, put some cranks in, and then we'll see what happens. So safety first. I've got some glasses that will sit on the bench, and I've got a mask which I will put on because I don't want carbon dust. It'll be long. It's not particularly dangerous, pretty inert, but don't want to get a sore throat. That should go in all right. Now, what I want to check is that it's not too tight that it's pinching the bearing and taking the bearing out of its clearance. So I've got my finger on the bottom bearing in here, and it's still spinning smoothly. So what I'll probably do is, because this obviously goes in from one side, just like a hand beanie, I'll push this in so this bearing is in this cup, stop, feel the bearing drag. If it's crushing the bearing, I'll take it out and open it up again before I push it all the way through. Because once these one-piece things are through and in, they're extremely difficult to get out. So I don't want to mess this up. I don't want to have to do it twice. We did the quick and dirty measurement with the vernier calipers. Now these aren't great for measuring a bore because you're basically measuring down a line contact, and also because the anvil has a thickness to it, you actually bridge across the curvature of the bore. So then, okay for a quick and dirty measurement, but if you want to sort of double the accuracy, you need something like a tri-lobe micrometer, which they're super expensive. Like they're about 2,000 quid for a good one. They measure a very small ranges of bores. So you can get one that will measure from like 20 to 25 mil or like 40 to 43 mil, and then you need to buy another one. They're just ridiculously expensive. But I use this on car cylinder bores, like classic car cylinder bores, and this is a bore gauge. It's good for about 0.01 millimeters, but it does take some experience to get to use it because you can actually impart quite a lot of user error in it. And basically what it is a long rod inside here which is connected to a dial gauge, and it basically just shows you deviation. It doesn't give you an absolute measurement. So this I would say is an absolute measurement device, although this is a cheap caliper, it's a little bit crap. It's an absolute measurement device. This just measures deviation. So this actually needs to be calibrated to 41 millimeters. Now I've calibrated this to 41 millimeters with a micrometer, and then what the dial gauge shows you is just deviation away from that. So we know this should be 41 millimeters. That's set so when this dial is reading 0, it's a 41. Then we can put it in the bore, you wiggle it, you find basically the minimum or the maximum of the deviation, and that is your smallest point across the circle. And then the beauty about this is you're not measuring on a line contact, you're measuring basically on two kind of ball bearing points. So you're measuring on point contacts. You can do it infinite points around the circle, infinite depths, which you can't really do with the vernier because that's we'll just measure the smallest point because it's on a line contact. Quite a good tool to use, very versatile. For instance, this Mitutoyo one will do I think between 35 and 60 mil based upon what adapter you put in the edge. So it's very versatile. You just need to calibrate it first to get the absolute side of it. Anyway, we'll stick it in, as the bishop said to the schoolboy. And what you do here is you just wiggle it basically, and you'll see that the dial is deviating away from 0. Now obviously if you hold it like that, you're going to get a longer distance across the inside of the cylinder, so it does need to be held pretty perpendicular. And then what you do is when you've got it almost perpendicular, you sort of wiggle it, and that will find your minima or maxima size. Anything this side of 0 is smaller, and then when it goes that side of 0, like if I hold it really on the piss, those two points open up and we get a bigger diameter. So that would be an incorrect measurement. Right, I've moved a bit closer. Hopefully you can see the dial. So you're holding it pretty perpendicular, and you're finding that minimum point, which is there, and then drops away that side, gets to the minimum, drops away that side. So we know that where it was reading about 50 microns under, that's about the minimum. What's that, 50 or 60 microns under? So that's still a tickle too small. That's about 40.94. And you can measure infinite points around the circle. Anything this side of zero is a small deviation, and then when you go on the obviously tilt and the jaws open up, bigger than zero, if you see what I mean.
Race carbon fibre originates from Japan.
So there we are. Just to prove to you, the other side is way bigger. The minimum deviation there is only about 20 microns, which is bang on the standard 40.98 is what you want.
And more than 66% of it is T800.
Again, it's 40.95 there, because it's 5 divisions, that's 50 microns, so that's 40.95. So it's anything but round, but it should be good enough, and that's with a tickle. So let's have a look at the other one and see what that's like before any mods, and then we'll decide which group set the bike's going on, because the group set needs to be wired through the bottom bracket, under the bottom bracket before building up. Now, that wouldn't have been a problem if I'd have got the EDS group set. Well, EDS first approached me about this build, said, can we send you a group set? And they wanted a review after a week. And I said, no, try 3 months. They sort of reluctantly agreed. I think we agreed on like 2 months for a ride review. That was the compromise. And then I said, you know, there's no review of the video. The video is what it is. I own the right to upload the video. There's no bias. I'm not letting you control the narrative. And then literally the next day they said, I'm sorry, we can't go forward with the collaboration at this time. I'm not saying that was the reason, it's because they couldn't control the narrative, but I asked for a reason and then they just repeated that email. So there's no EDS group set coming. You might have seen it on Patreon or Instagram that I was getting EDS. I'm not, I've just bought a Shimano group set, so that's what we'll be going with. So like I said, this one hasn't had its bottom touched, but let's see where we're at with this one. So actually it's not too bad. Across there it's about 50 microns too small. Check the other one. Now the other one's bigger across here. And that's about the same, so that's not too bad. It's 40.95. Let's go a bit deeper. So it looks like without a tickle this one's much better. I mean, it's still a little bit tight. 9.5 is a bit tight, but let's try further in. Let's move that. We'll keep the frame still. Hold it perpendicular to the... This side is much tighter, so that's almost 100 microns too small there. You see the needles on the 10. Rising, it's falling, rising, it's falling that side. So that is 40.9, so that's way too small. So this one obviously hasn't seen the flat wheel, and that's what you get. That's too small for any kind of bottom bracket. 40.9 would crush the bearings in a bottom bracket. The only way to remedy that without tickling it would be to stick in, you know, a one-piece bottom bracket, a metal one. You risk then rupturing the fibres if it's way too small, and I don't want to do that. So I'd rather open it up or use a plastic Shimano one. So there we go. Yeah, about 10 divisions on there, which is 100 microns. 0.1 of a mil. So let me know what colour you prefer and which one I should build in the comment section below. The seat post is now jammed in the frame. There's no wedge in there, but the wedge in, but it was so tight to get in and out of the frame, it scratched the hell out of it. It's just too tight to go in the frame and slide. I mean, it's better to be too tight and too loose, because it gives the clamp an easier time. Yes, right. Stuck. Fuck. Oh, it's coming. Right, withdrawing my scabbard from the sheath. No, withdrawing my sword from the scabbard. Stuck again. Right, here we go. Scratched up. You can see how scratched up it is. I mean, I guess it's just the lacquer or whatever, but it's pretty brutal, and it's such a shame because this frame is definitely EPS molded. So it's very, very smooth, and I'll get a torch in there in the workshop. There's no wrinkles or anything. It's definitely done with an EPS former. In the seat tube and the head tube is super smooth, and from what you can see of the BB shell, internally it's really, really nice. However, I think that's just a bit tight. Just needs a bit more reaming before they send that out, because when the clamp's in there as well, you can barely insert this.
If it doesn't work, you can always hit him with it.
So it's this weird BB that ships with the frame. It's got very wafer thin sort of plastic sleeves on these surfaces which press fit into the PF86 shell. Now the PF86 shell on the frame is undersized, marginally. It'll be all right. However, I don't know if we're using these plastic sleeves or not. I'm not using them because as it shipped to me, that one's broken. Utterly ridiculous. And also on that side, that one's broken as well. Now, when I do use the plastic sheaves and I put the calipers across, one side is dead on 41 and one side is 41.8. I mean, it'd be better not to ship with a BB because this just devalues the whole product. Most frames don't ship with a BB, so if you can't make a decent BB, don't ship one in the box because it just makes everything look shit. So we'll throw that in the garden. Unfortunately for mechanical users, you can't use it mechanical, which for a kind of cheaper end, well, it's not cheap. So you'd have thought from a Chinese direct-to-consumer frame company, it'd be a bit cheaper. Maybe some people are cheaping out still using mechanical. Look, nothing against mechanical, let me just say that, but you can't use it on this. I don't even think you'd be able to use 11-speed Di2 because of the space for the cables. So obviously the cables run in front of the fork, down through these spacers, and there's only just room for 2 hydraulic hoses. I don't think you'd get hydraulic hose and a Di2. If you did, it's going to have a hard time not to snag or rub. You definitely need to heat shrink it. So really on this frame set, I think you're using 12-speed Di2 or Axis SRAM. This is a bit of an abomination. You know how I go on about chamfering edges on seat post clamps? If you don't chamfer the edges, what happens? You damage the seat post because it bites into it, and it also damages itself. But what's happened, one of the knife edges has obviously had a bit of an impact in the box or in the machining and dented itself and actually burred over. So if they broke that corner with a chamfer or a radius, that would not happen. I'll catch my fingernail on it and I can tiddlywink it across the fucking table. Try again. That burr, super sharp. You can hear it. I can catch a nail on it. That's going to bite the seat post. Now, not being funny, but most threads wouldn't even look at this twice. That's going to need filing off so it doesn't bite the seat post. So I'll take the Dremel to that and file this all flat. Just round that corner off, and it's the same on the other side. God, the simple things. You can't charge $2,000 for this shit. I've chamfered these 3 sides already with a little diamond file, and I need to do that one because that'll just destroy the seat post. I shouldn't have to do this, man. Coming onto their own butt plug design. Now this, I know for a fact, is going to be a pain. So let's get into that. Good luck getting any replacements ever because there's absolutely 0 identifiers or size markings on this. Completely plain. So I guess you go into Tavelo to get a new one of these, which is pretty annoying because you should be able to pick that up from a bearing supplier or bike shop. The cup, nicely moulded, no loose carbon, no overspray. Let's drop the old girl in. Pretty loose. Now I know, that should be taken out of preload, but such is the way with disc brake bikes. You can get quite sharp frontal loads on the fork and these will clunk about and overcome preload. I think that's a bit loose. Could have done better with that. But we'll see what it's like when we ride it, of course. Next piece, I've just dropped. Next piece is the conical spacer, where it has a slot in the front for the cables to go down. Then there's another spacer, which has got 2 little holes in it to key in the top bearing cover. Now, this is what I was saying earlier. Gone are the days where you got proper top bearing covers with an O-ring on the steerer tube and a lip seal around the edge to protect this top bearing from sweat and weather. Now we've just got a lump of plastic. So let's have a look at the lump of plastic. There's the top bearing and cover in position. First thing to check, does it touch the frame? No, it's nicely clear off the frame. I have seen frames before where once you preload it, this top cap is rubbing the frame. Absolutely unforgivable. There you can see there's hardly any gap there in that slot. You've only got space for, I'd say, 2 hydraulic hoses, not a Di2 as well. And there's no mechanical steering stop. So putting a Di2 cable down there, even if it was heat shrinked, I think it would be risky. Brake mounts look to be faced nicely. Only time will tell once we put the caliper on how well aligned it is. But the paint keep out areas have been done in accordance with the Shimano diagram. I think it's a diameter of 13mm slot around the
slot where the caliper mounts is the paint keep out area. I'll put the standard on screen here just to double check, but that looks pretty good, and it's the same on the fork. I noticed this on Jesse Coyle's build. Now Jesse Coyle from the Nero show got sent one of these, had it built up by a mechanic. I noticed straight away when he put his picture on Instagram, the routing for the Di2 cable comes out under here, not here. And that makes the cable perilously close to the chain and rear cassette. You could kind of run it outside here and kind of heat shrink it or tape it down, but then in a crash you might chafe through it because the cable's then on the outside. If you run it kind of over here, it's going to be close to the cassette and the chain when you're in the 11. So I think it's a bit dangerous to do it there. They should have just stuck it out the back here like everyone else does it, which works, and it's well away from the chain and the cassette when it's in the 11. Now, there's two ways of doing dropouts. You can either thread the replaceable part, so the mech hanger, when you've got through axle, you can either thread that, or you can put a permanent thread in the frame. And in this case, there is a permanent thread in the frame, and it's aluminium, which is bonded into the carbon, the forged carbon dropout. Now that's fine, except if you ever fuck that thread up or it gets damaged, the frame's a write-off. You can't really repair that. Right, so here's Tavelo's proprietary expander bung. Obviously it's profiled for the D-shaped steerer. Now you've got this black bit, and there's no instructions provided with this, so you're on your own, or it's up to me, I guess, to tell you. I'm not paid to do this, so I hope I've got it right. You've got this black bit which slides down in that cavity there to, guys, like, stop the fork getting crushed, which is, you know, just a little shim. It's quite nice. And then you've got on the top there's a tiny lip which stops it going all the way down. But having said that, I can't actually get it in, and I've loosened the stem bolts off so they're loose, and the fork's about to drop out. It doesn't go in. It's too tight. My hatred of all top caps, these kind of one-piece top caps, and I hate these because you can't get much compression on them because they bear down right at the edges of this big disc, which is a big diameter, and you lose a lot of compression in the kind of bolt head friction because it's essentially just one big bolt. It's much better to have a, you know, a small M5 or an M6 in the middle, where the bolt head friction is a lot lower and you get a lot more squeeze for your torque. So these need to be done up, you know, normally really tight, and on a normal one you'd only need to nip it up. And what with all the cables that are bung through here, well, will be bung through here, these disc brake bikes need a lot more preload than normal to squish everything down, and these just aren't up to the job. My Yolio one came with a version like this, and I replaced it with a normal top cap and bolt, because it's much easier to get the preload with less torque. You turn this whole assembly, there's a lot of friction right at the edge here between the top cap and the stem, and you don't actually get a lot of squeeze for your torque. So yeah, it may look good and it may weigh next to nothing, but practically they're a bit shit. And like I said, with the forces that disc brakes give you on the front of these, it's very easy to get the headset clunking around and to overcome the preload, especially because that top bearing was loose as a goose in that top seat. It'd be nicer to get a normal assembly on there to give it more squish, more preload. And I've found with disc brake bikes, especially with internal cables, you definitely need more preload than you ever used to on a rim brake bike. With a normal headset, you literally needed to nip up finger tight, clamp the stem bolts, and there'd never be any play. And I think I've already snapped one of the O-rings at the bottom. They're so small, and this is a very, very tight fit, even though I've wound it all the way off. And I've already lost once. Let's try and get it out. Oh, the bottom O-ring. No, it's still there. I've already lost the bottom nut down the fork leg once because it's not anodized. I think all these expander bungs need to be anodized. Like, not many companies do it, but that's raw aluminium, and you're going to get a hell of a lot of corrosion between that and the carbon. There's no glass on the inside of that carbon, so it is going to link with sweat, and it's just going to go white, powdery, and, you know, this is a non-redundancy area. You can't risk this getting damaged. So yeah, this needs anodizing. There are two little lips on that side and one lip at that side. Do not try and force this in upside down because they'll bend and it'll get stuck. Those lips butt up against the top of the steerer. So let's try and get it in. And then if you're cutting the fork, you probably want to put this in to preload it all, to set the height properly with the bearing preload. And then I guarantee when you try and take it out, it doesn't come out. So let's see if we can push it in and get it out without damaging the O-rings. You can see it's so tight. I've actually just pushed the fork down. Just need to put the camera down and push it in. So I still can't get it out. So I'm going to loosen the nut. And now the bottom nut, you heard that, it's just dropped to the bottom of the fork. And this top bit is still completely jammed in. So the bottom nut is still in there. And I can't get this out. Let's see what it's done to my thumbnail. So good luck trying to get this out after use when it's gone all sweaty and corroded and stuck in there. Not easy. Here it comes. I bet you the O-rings are broken. And it'll come out in 3 bloody pieces. Yep. As if by magic. One O-ring's gone. Oh no! It's there. It's there. Second O-ring. How many O-rings have we got on there? 2. Alright, we lost 1 O-ring. That's a miracle. But we have lost the bottom nut. So this needs a redesign. It doesn't need to be that difficult. Other companies do it with D-shaped steerers. I basically had to drop the bottom nut off there to get it out. Yes, there's the other O-ring. And when people say frames are stiff, if they're riding with that much spaces, like me, they're not stiff. So why don't they just make head tubes longer? Not many people on a 56 or above are riding slammed anymore, because we know that the fastest position is parallel forearms, horizontal forearms to the ground on the hoods. That is the aero position. If it's too low, you can't sustain that position because you're kneeing yourself in the chest. Even if you're super flexible, it's not a flexibility thing. I'm probably one of the most flexible people I know. But if you're kneeing yourself in the chest, it's not sustainable. So make the head tube longer, get rid of all the spaces, and then realise the stiffness, because this as a column is about 10 times as stiff as the steerer tube. And now if I've got that much spaces, my front half of my body is hanging off the steerer tube, and I'm, you know, deciding the stiffness of the bike from that exposed steerer tube above the top bearing. And that steerer tube at that tiny diameter ain't very stiff. So let's increase head tube length, realise that it might look a bit odd, but increase the head tube length, then ride it slam, and then you're getting the full stiffness of this big old box section. With the spaces, I'm just hanging off a little bit of steerer tube. Right, I've had this problem before with other crappy expander bungs. Now, the stem is such a tight fit over the steering column, and now I've got that little shim in, that when I screw on the top cap, instead of pressing the stem down, it's pulling the whole expand assembly up and out. You can see how it's lifted away from the top of the fork. Oh my god, this bike is it's a beater. It's another beater. 2 ways to look at this. I can either tighten the 4 mil that's down there to make the expander grip the steerer even harder. The risk of that is it might even split the steerer if I do it too hard because it's thin walled, and it'll make the fit between the stem and the steerer even tighter. So I'm a bit of a loss here, and you can see how loose this is. I've not even taken out the gaps on the spacers. Look, that one still hasn't sat down on its spigot, and these are all loose to go up and down still. So it's a fair way to go, and the stem is basically stuck on the steer, and it's just pulling the expander bung out. Well, they're still playing it, and I dare tighten it anymore because every time I tighten it, it's just lifting the bung out. So I'm going to come back to this, maybe with a different top cap, maybe put some carbon paste on that bung. But I just want to get the wheels on and show you what it looks like at my saddle height and show you how low this stack is. So the black TCR rim brake bike here is my kind of road TT bike that I've been doing all my races on this year, well, the few that I've entered anyway, and this is my fastest known position, which is validated and backed up by the Ghibli aero sensor. This is the stack, and this is the reach that I've settled on to get parallel forearms, flat forearms when in the hoods, and can hold it for a long period of time. Now that's helped by these funky bars. More on these coming soon, but I can basically rest my wrists on there, whereas on a traditional bar it's so short you can't. But anyway, my point is there's not a lot of scope to go up on stack on a Tavelo, and it's just fortunate that pretty much the bars are exactly the same stack. Now the stack on paper between these 2 frames is 1mm different, but on the TCR you get a much longer steerer tube to cut if you want to. On this you don't get any steerer tube to cut. That's the highest it will go. So you have to be pretty damn flexible to ride this bike, and you have to like it pretty damn low. That seat post on the Tavelo is set for my seat height, and that is the drop. Huge amount of drop. It's not good that they don't offer you any more height than that. The trend is to go super low at the front, but low and slammed is not always fast, especially when you're kneeing yourself in the chest. Slightly higher stack with parallel forearms. That's the fastest known position. Long, low and slammed. I've got to stop thinking that's fast, because it isn't. It might be on a 48 or a 50cm frame, where if you slam the stem, it's basically still in line with the saddle. It's okay for shorter riders, but when you're above a 56 or a 58, slammed becomes really quite limiting. Absolutely massive in there. No worries on the front. Diameter wise, seat tube's fine. It's just, yeah, with a 32, and this is a 23mm internal rim. There's not a lot of clearance there, but it should be okay. I don't think it's going to rub.
and then the next time you see this frame, it might be being ridden. Cheers, and I'll see you in the next one.